Hello again, Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 here as we continue our preseason football previews of SEC teams. We are doing this one day after SEC Media Days has ended, so we're doing Georgia mid-July, which is interesting. There was a key dismissal or dismissal of significance this week that we'll talk about. But Chase, first of all, before we get into the Bulldogs, who are absolutely loaded, let's talk about our sponsors at BetOnline.
Yeah, BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics. Got those coming up in a couple of weeks. Baseball, Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, you can go over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker. They have one over 150 slots games. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Well, the Georgia roster talent always starts with a discussion of how elite that talent is, Chase. And we had a guest on our show this week where we were looking through some ratings for this year in terms of preseason rankings. And Georgia was 4 points higher than the rest of the field in terms of, like, you put Georgia against anybody in the country, and Ohio State was number 2. Georgia was 4 points ahead. I think as I've taken a headfirst dive into Georgia's roster, I mean, of course, like, you could kind of do this in your sleep, right? You kind of know that Kirby Smart is recruited well, and they got a lot of talent. So we're not breaking new ground here. I get that. But I was looking through just some preseason predictions. I'm looking through Athlon and Lindy's and Phil Steele and all the teams out there. Literally half their starting lineup almost. I think you saw 10 guys, I believe, get some form of All-American recognition. That might be 14, but that's still something. And another, 6 guys outside that got some form All-SEC recognition. Again, that might be third team or fourth team, but still, that's crazy. There's like 2 or 3 guys on this team that didn't get some form of preseason recognition somewhere. One of those is Rara Thomas, who was a leading receiver at Mississippi State, I think, 2 years ago. A couple of them are Warren Brinson and Chaz Chambliss, who played football at Georgia for a while and have been productive players. It's just it's crazy how talented these guys are.
You know, and it's what's so fascinating to me is a lot of teams, yes, they'll have a loaded roster. Well, the next year, there's still some guys coming back, but they take a little hit, with whether it's the draft or the portal, whatever it is. It's just amazing to me how Kirby can just reload this roster year in and year out.
Yeah.
Just think this year, or this past year, all the guys that have lost, whether it's to the NFL draft or, and a lot of those being to the NFL draft, especially out of the receiver room, which we'll dive into. But he's just reloaded this roster, and it's amazing that he does this year in and year out. There's no rebuild of Georgia ever. It's just a reload. And I think it's going to be that way for as long as Kirby Smart is the head coach at Georgia, which I think, he's younger, he's energetic. I mean, I think he's going to be there for a while. And so I think it's just going to be a reload every year for the Georgia Bulldogs. And it is amazing to sit back and look at it. And I'm excited to see at the end of this run for Georgia how many championships they have, how many guys went to the NFL. I mean, it's really amazing what Georgia is doing here, what Kirby Smart specifically is doing in reloading this roster.
Yeah, and when they do lose guys on occasion, which isn't often, and usually they're guys that are, I don't know, third, fourth stringers. I mean, they lost Jason Dumas-Johnson, who is played a lot of time for them at linebacker, to Kentucky, and also lost their backup quarterback Brock Vandegrift, who I think was the highest rated quarterback they had on the roster. Like, even when they're not getting 5 stars, like Carson Beck was not Arch Manning out of high school, but they've developed him. He waited his time. now he's, maybe the front runner for the Heisman, I think, as we do this. It's just development, recruiting, anything that you can do with a football roster, retention. It just feels like Kirby Smart has more than figured it out. Again, we're not breaking new territory here, but let's start with Carson Beck. First year as a starter last year, did tremendous things. They've got 2 backups that anybody would kill to have, including the alleged $13 million man, Jaden Rashada, who I guess will be carrying the clipboard is the number 3. But I think all discussion starts with Georgia and the potential Heisman front runner.
Yeah, looking at Carson Beck's numbers last year, this is one of the best years I feel like for a Georgia quarterback that we've seen in a long time. Just looking at his numbers, 302 of 417 passing, 3,941 yards, 24 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. There's just incredible numbers last year. You mentioned media days was this past week, and I listened to so many interviews that Carson Beck did with different radio stations or TV or whatever it was. And he's just so just hearing him talk about after that SEC championship game, obviously it didn't go how Georgia wanted it to. And, in that moment, he knew he wanted to come back. He wanted to come back to Georgia, and he wanted to lead this team to a championship this year. So he's a fantastic leader along with the great numbers that he has. But I love watching him play. And again, yeah, he wasn't a guy he wasn't Arch Manning coming out of high school like you made comparison to, but he's done a great job developing. He was Stetson Bennett. He got the job last year, and boy, he took advantage of it. He did a great job, had a great year. And if we were handing out the Heisman Trophy right now, it would be him. He's got to be the favorite right now. And I'm just so impressed every time he steps on the field, what he can do. And I think that he's going to have an outstanding season this year. Again, based off the numbers he had last year, and I think he'll exceed those this year. He's going to be so much fun to watch.
Well, one reason I like his chances at the Heisman is it always helps your chances as a quarterback if you can stay upright and stay healthy. This is ridiculous. Okay, I'm looking through, again, different magazines. They have got 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen are getting All-American run somewhere. The tackles are on the screen. The third, their left tackle, who was a freshman, first-team All-American a year ago, Xavier Truss, who's been there a while at right tackle, getting All-American mention. Their guards, Dylan Fairchild, who I feel like goes kind of overlooked with some of the names we know. Tate Rutledge, who's been there a long time, been a terrific guy for them, a second-team All-American a year ago. The only guy that's left out is Jared Wilson. That's just because they turned it over at center, but he played 7 games a year ago. I mean, it kind of feels like when you're set up with 4 potential All-Americans on your offensive line, you have to find ways, unless their defense is awful or something, and spoiler alert, it's not, to find ways that they're not going to have an elite year.
Yeah, you're so right. And this offensive line that the staff has put together is just tremendous. I mean, and we knew it was. I mean, they had a great offensive line last year, and they've kept building on that. I mean, there's so much experience on this line. And yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do. They lost their top offensive lineman, Amarius Mims, but I feel like they just went out and got somebody else just as good. So yeah, when you look at the quarterback position, always it kind of depends on what your offensive line looks like, and boy, do they have a good, strong front to protect Carson Beck and to protect some of these skill guys that we'll talk about here in just a second. But really, really impressed with the size, with the experience of the guys that they have on this offensive line. And offense starts with the line, and boy, they got a good one.
They're huge. They average about 315 or so across their starting front. There's skill positions too. I think it's kind of hard for a Georgia receiver ever to make all SEC, because I think I counted this up from, I think like 21 or 22 guys caught passes last year. Of course, they lost their best pass catcher, Brock Bowers, who was a I don't know. I think we're having the discussion for the top tight ends in the history of college football. I don't know if he's the guy. I'd have to dive into it, but he's on that short list for sure. But they got Rara Thomas. He and Dominic Lovett came in and kind of took a back seat when they transferred from Mississippi State and Missouri, respectively. But Kirby Smart's pretty good at saying, you wait your time, you'll get your turn. That they got those guys. They brought in a couple of transfers, actually 3 of them, in Colbie Young from Miami, Michael Jackson III from Southern Cal, London Humphres from Vanderbilt, who would have been Vanderbilt's best receiver. He's not even cracking the 2 deep that I'm seeing as we do this in July, but could fly. Just talent all over the board again. And tight ends where I think, when you drop from Bowers to anybody, there's going to be a drop-off, but Oscar Delp's played a lot. Lawson Luckie's played a good bit. And then in the running back room, Trevor Etienne, who figures to plug in and be one of the best in the league right away. I think I took all your talking points away. I'm sorry for that, but what have you got left?
Well, I mean, I thought you brought up something good when you first started, just talking about the waiting your turn. These guys, we live in a day and age in college football where guys don't wait their turn. They go find somewhere else to play where they could play immediately. And these guys transferred into Georgia and they didn't see much time. They didn't get a lot of catches, but they knew that they would have their time to shine. And that's this year. I mean, and when you're so invested in a program that you're going to sit and wait in this day and age of the transfer portal and all that you're going to sit and wait your turn, shows one, what kind of guys these are. And two, that, hey, they know this team can do incredible things and they're going to stick with it and make it happen. And, a lot of people say, well, how are they going to fit in with Carson Beck? It's pretty much all new starting receivers. Are they going to gel? I can go ahead and tell you they've spent a lot of time in a room with Carson Beck, getting on the same page as him, working out, catching balls he's throwing up. I mean, these guys are really good receivers. I think the numbers are going to be off the charts this year. One, because Carson Beck's a great quarterback, but two, these receivers, they're ready to roll. I mean, they see the potential of this team, and so I'm excited. Yeah, all the names you mentioned, I think we're going to see a lot of guys get touches. I think it's not just going to be 2 or 3 receivers that we see all game, every game. No, I think there's going to be 5, 6 guys who are making catches and who are making an impact for this Georgia offense. That's just how it's built. It's not built for 1 or 2 guys to shine. No, it's built for 6, 7 guys to shine on offense, and that's what Georgia has.
Yeah, they're just so creative too. A bunch of guys get touches. You got tight ends getting carries, and I feel like one of the biggest things Kirby Smart's done, and I think this is what's impressive, right? Not only did they mostly not lose their top end guys, but then you would think that they would somewhere lose some backups. I know they've lost some guys, but you would think they would really crack into their depth. But I just look everywhere, and they protected the downside. Like, say something happens to Carson Beck. They've got Gunnar Stockton, who played a little bit last year. They've got Jaden Rashad. Everybody knows about him, who's followed college football, who got some time as a true freshman at Arizona State as their number 3. I mean, as it is on paper in July, they've got a ton of guys who've caught balls. They've got backup offensive linemen who played. I mean, I feel like, yes, if you get some key injuries, it's going to take a drop off. But they have just done such a good job of building depth and continuity within the program, which is just hard to do in the day and age of NIL. And, if you're not playing and you're not getting paid, I mean, how many teams in the country could make Georgia's second teamers and even third teamers, first teamers in a blink of an eye? And that's impressive. And look, defense too. I'll just let you take the lead here. 5 guys who have gotten some All-American mention. They got Jalen Walker, who may not even start, depending on which depth chart you consult, who's getting, I think, all-SEC run a little bit at Athlon, perhaps. I didn't write down which one, but I noted that he got some run. Again, depth, guys who played behind him, 5 stars across the board. I mean, it just feels like it's the same script we could have given you 3 years ago, and it's the same script we're probably going to be giving you 3 years from now. The names will just have changed.
Yeah, and before we get into defense, I want to say this, Chris. This is a championship program, and all the things you just mentioned, and we've been talking about of guys staying, guys waiting their turn, all these kind of things like that. That's what championship programs do.
Yeah.
And Kirby Smart has built a championship program. This is a championship roster. I would be zero surprised if Georgia won the college football playoff this year. If Georgia goes unbeaten, nothing would surprise me when I look at this roster and I look at the program Kirby Smart's built. I mean, it's a championship program. And so, but the defense, incredible once again. And there's a lot of young guys. And, I listened to Kirby Smart and stuff this week, talk at media days, about these guys, he may be, maybe not concerned, but have some reservations about especially the secondary. Defense is his side of the ball. He expects perfection, but some of these guys are young. They may be unproven, but they're so talented, and the talent is unmatched. And you look at other defenses across the country, across the SEC, and a lot of these young guys would be stars on some of these secondaries, but the roster he's built on defense is just incredible. And I know you make very copious notes and as we prepare for this, and I'm looking at all these guys on the roster, on the depth chart you sent me, and I see so many fives when on the star rating, so many 5 stars. That's incredible. The guys he's able to recruit, not only on defense, on offense as well, but these defensive guys, again, you may not know them to start the season because there are some young guys. You'll know them by the end. Incredible what the roster holds here on defense.
Yeah, I think if you want to pick nits, and that's kind of how you do it, right? When you've got most teams, you're going, all right, where is it that they're good and the weaknesses are kind of more obvious. With Georgia, you've got to really dig in and say, all right, if there's going to be a problem where this season doesn't go as expected, and I'm not by any shape or form betting that's going to happen. But if you said there's a scenario in which something went wrong and they didn't hit expectations, I kind of look at maybe the defensive backfield. They've got Dalen Everett, who's an All-American corner, Malachi Starks, who's an All-American safety, but they got Julian Humphres at one corner, didn't start any games a year ago. Their safety depth took a little bit of a hit when they kicked the kid off for speeding this week, whose name is a nightmare to pronounce, and I'll probably botch it, so I won't get there. But, and Dan Jackson is their starting strong safety. Like in terms of talent they brought in, he's more old than he is like an elite NFL-type talent. If you're saying, well, that's where they might struggle, that's probably it. But, they've got talent behind them. I mean, they got Daniel Harris was a 5-star recruit by some guys, maybe backing up Humphrey. Ellis Robinson was a consensus 5-star recruit, the number 2 player in the class, I think, according to On3's composite ranking. And so maybe he starts at the other corner, and maybe we're just talking nonsense at this point. But that's where we are. You have to look really hard and almost invent ways, not invent, but be creative in finding, all right, if there's a problem, where's it going to be?
Yeah, but even if one area isn't as strong as the other, I think there's so many stars on the field that the talent level is going to make up for the lack of talent, and the scheming. Kirby Smart's and his defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann, who I think is will be a head coach one day. He's a great coach, great defensive mind. Their scheming helps that as well, to where if there are holes on the field, that they're able to make up for it in other ways. And so, if it is maybe a lack of talent in one area, I think it'll be hard to tell when they're on the field on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, and even if you go to special teams, they've always got athletes back there. That they've got Brett Thorson, who I think is kind of underrated. He's a really, really good punter, and looks like he's a safety or a linebacker. And that's just Georgia for even their punter looks like a dude. They got Peyton Woodring coming back at kicker. Again, not a guy that gets a lot of attention, but I like guys who can take care of business, because when you're on this offense, all you got to do is take care of business. 21 of 25 on field goals last year, hit all 71 of his point afters. You just want a guy that you can count on to do what they need to do, and they've even got dudes there that have played a lot of ball and checked a lot of boxes.
Yeah, and again, you don't get to see Thorson a lot. I think he only punted 30 times last year. The offense does so well, and so but really impressed with what they have on special teams, and I want to mention this too, just the staff that Kirby Smart, he had to replace 4 assistant coaches this year too. Went on to be head coaches in Fran Brown, who went to Syracuse, and Del McGee went to Georgia State. And so he's been able to get another great coaching staff together. And again, Mike Bobo, great offensive coordinator, Glenn Schumann, defensive coordinator, and to go along with the great head coaching of Kirby Smart. And so he's put together, again, a championship type staff. And that's also going to be fun to see moving forward. Again, you saw this a lot at Alabama under Nick Saban. A lot of the assistants going off because they're getting head coaching jobs, and him having to constantly replace assistants. And I think that's going to be the way for Kirby Smart because, again, these are great guys he has on his staff that are going to have the opportunity to move on to head coaching jobs. But really impressed with the job he also did putting another good staff together.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do. Georgia, I think, just ran into some bad luck last year. You lose one game. It's a year when there's a lot of parity. This year, I mean, I don't know what the odds are on Georgia not making a 12-team playoff. I think probably something less than the odds that, I'll be playing quarterback for Georgia. This time next year. But that's just the kind of the team they've assembled. I mean, the schedule, is it going to be easy? We've talked about that in another video, but that's the fun of college football. You want to see these guys take on the best. And is this a team? That's one thing that's kind of been a pet peeve in college football. Sometimes you have these dynasties, but sometimes you only play 1 or 2 interesting games here. I think that's what's going to be interesting with Georgia is there's going to be some challenges along the way, and we really get to see how good they are.
They've never played a schedule like this.
Yeah.
They've never played a schedule like this. I mean, because you're starting the season off with Clemson. You're making trips to Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss, 3 teams who are favored to be college football playoff teams, and you have to travel to all 3 of those, and then hosting some really tough teams as well in the SEC. And so, they've never played a schedule like this, but also this is a team that's battle tested and ready for a schedule like this. And so I think it's going to make for really fun football for the Georgia Bulldogs. This is a great team, a great roster. But yeah, it just so works out that they have a very tough schedule. And we on the SEC Football Hour on this week, we talked with Kelly Ford on his ratings, and he has Georgia way up there in his schedule, difficulty of schedule ratings. And so, yeah, it's tough, but again, this team is battle tested. They've played in some really tough games. And I think we can all say they were one of the best 4 teams last year, and they didn't make the playoff. They lost Alabama in the SEC championship, and they very well could have won the national championship last year. We know what they did down in the Orange Bowl to Florida State to end the season. Just brutal. And so, this team, again, they've just reloaded to another championship team. And I'm excited to see all these games, but especially their trips to Tuscaloosa, to Austin, Texas, and Oxford, Mississippi, because this is going to be really fun football for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, August 31st against Clemson is when they get to unwrap the gift that's been sitting under the tree for months now. And that's a stage where Georgia's just obliterated some good opponents in the past. Be interested to see if they can do that this year to a team that obviously – Clemson pretty stingy defensively most years, a little harder to blow out than some teams Georgia's blown out. But, hey, when you're Kirby Smart in Georgia, you got this kind of talent, you're capable of putting it on just about anybody.
You're right about that. And, again, this is it's going to be a fun year for the Bulldogs. And I think with Carson Beck kind of leading the way, like we talked about earlier in this video, I think it's paving the way for what could be a really fun year. A lot of big numbers, a lot of scoring, especially with the offensive line they have. If they can hold up and allow the offense to to do what they know how to do. And again, like we've mentioned in other videos, I think this year's the year of the offense for the SEC, but this is a defense that is going to match up with all these really good quarterbacks and really good offenses.
Yeah, there's some good defenses in this league, too. I think they get overlooked by all the offensive firepower and the addition of 2 Big 12 teams that tend to score a lot of points. But, yeah, that's a fair point, too. So, Chase, look forward to watching Georgia this season, to talking about them every week. We do recaps. We do previews. We got a football show once a week. We got basketball content. We got baseball content. If you are new to us, our job here, we don't tell you about Georgia as well as like an Anthony Dasher or somebody. But what we do is we tell you about the league as a whole and all those 3 sports. And we do a lot of homework. We dive in. So if you're a Georgia fan, you're just coming to our channel, discovering us, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. And sponsors, we got an audience in the millions of every year. Need to pay the bills. Caroline.smith@southeastern14.com. Yes, we are Southeastern 16 now, but that email address will get your email to the right place. If you're interested in partnering with us from an advertising perspective, we'd certainly love that. All right. For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching us here we're Southeastern 16. Thanks for watching our video, which is presented by BetOnline.